Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 4700 and 4176. Today's date is July 26, 2026. It's been almost like a night at 9:57 p.m. All right. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, not trying to tell you. I don't know why. Okay, let's just jump into the question. All right. Yeah. All right, so let's go. Okay, so question is, what information should every artifact contain? Oh, that is a really good question. All right, yeah. First of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? I wanted to build a Adam. What is exactly Adam? Adam is a AI. It's a future prediction AI. Means like that it's a artificial intelligence, but also it could kind of like a predict possible future. I wanted to build such a AI that could predict the future. Before I wanted to build such a AI that could predict the future, I wanted to aware of all the possible consequences. How do I knew that? How do I aware of that? By asking question to myself. I went to ChatGPT. I say that I wanted to build such a AI that could predict the future. Also, I wanted to understand all the possible consequences. Suggest me hundreds of questions. ChatGPT kind of like suggest me hundreds of questions. This is one of those questions. Now, regarding about the question says that what information should every artifact contain? Okay, what information should every artifact contain? What exactly is this thing? So basically, is this thing. Well, Adam can predict the possible future regarding about the data that it has. Okay, yeah. Now, basically, why? Okay, there is a kind of like a one kind of like a things that I wanted to tell you. Okay, can any AI can predict the possible future? Yes. Like basically, we are arrived at some certain like arrived at that point that we could predict the future. Now it sound kind of like a really futuristic, but that is not. Okay, like since we are kind of like a build the AI, like what is exactly the future? Okay, yeah. Like it's not really that a kind of like a something that you could able to be see your future and things and that. No, it's not. Okay. What exactly future means what? Okay, yeah. Now imagine a kind of like a simply a maze. Okay. In a maze, there is a kind of like a simply thousands of input and thousands of output. Okay, like imagine as a kind of like a very complex maze, very complex maze, which has a kind of like a millions of input and millions of output. Okay. Now what is exactly input and what is exactly output? Okay. So millions of input means like that millions of action that we do every single day, every single second, things and that and that. So that is called kind of like a millions of input. Okay. Millions of output means whatever the consequences that it take when we kind of like do the action. So millions of input represent whatever the action that we do at the action that we do. Millions of output represent whatever the consequences that it get. Example, I just say that I kind of like ate the pizza at night at 3 a.m. Okay, at night at 3 a.m. I ate the pizza. So this is a kind of like action that it does that I did. What is actually the consequences? The consequences is that I might not get sleep properly after that. Maybe next morning I will kind of like wake up very late. Also, next morning my stomach kind of like feels really heavy or things and that. I cannot able to be kind of like a perform, like I cannot able to perform the way that I usually perform every single morning. Okay, my morning is not really fresh. I didn't really went to toilet because I didn't really get any toilet because I don't know. Okay, so basically my kind of like the body clock kind of like somebody changed because of that I ate kind of like a whole pizza at night at 3 a.m. So basically is this thing, whatever the input that you do, means input means whatever the action that you do, I ate the pizza, consequences that these are kind of like only consequences. So every input has a kind of like a millions of consequences millions okay, every input or every actionable input have a kind of like a millions of output, okay, millions of consequences and things and that. Okay, now basically why does it has a millions of consequences? Why not we have kind of like a simply just kind of like a simply just one consequences? Well, basically, let's take a simple example. So imagine, as a same example, I ate a pizza at night at 3 a.m. Okay. Now, what is actually the consequences? The first consequences that I told you, that the next morning I wake up late. Also, I didn't really went to the toilet because I didn't really get any. My energy is not really good. I'm kind of like a feel really full. I'm not really kind of like a fully charged. My morning is kind of like a waste. Consequences number two. This is the consequences number one. Consequences number two. Consequences number two is that ki I ate the pizza, but I didn't really sleep entire night. I just kind of like a wake up, like I just kind of like a like wake till the morning, and I didn't really sleep, and kind of like a things like yeah, there is multiples of consequences. Another third consequences is that I ate a pizza, and then after that I kind of like a simply just sleep like a baby, and I just don't even knew I kind of like a sleep till afternoon at almost like a 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. Like yeah, like damn. So as I mentioned, there are so many possible consequences. Okay, another thing. Okay, I ate the pizza, so this is the kind of like a process, and in that process there's a multiple thing actually happened. Multiple thing means what? You order pizza, or did you went to the pizza store, or what? Like basically it's this thing that if you went to the pizza store might gonna close. Or consequences number two, while you are driving to the pizza store, someone kind of like accident actually happened. Okay, yeah. While you are kind of like assembly the went to the pizza store, multiple kind of like a consequences actually happen. Okay, so basically when things in actually in your control, you have a less consequences. But when you are in control, means like that your possibility of outcome is depend or rely on another people or another situation or surrounding, then consequences will be increase 10 times, 20 times, thousands of times, millions of consequences will gonna happen. So that's what I'm saying, that key, if you have whatever the action that you take means input, millions of consequences will gonna happen. Okay, so do you understand? So I'm trying to kind of like explain to you in as much as simple language possible. Now why it is kind of like a maze? Okay, why not it has a kind of like a straight line? Well, basically is this thing, it's not a kind of like a only one action represent a one possible consequences. No, they are interchange. So many things might gonna happen. You ate the pizza, maybe you kind of like a something that like your stomach get kind of like a something actually happened, you didn't really kind of like a digest, or maybe you just kind of like a throw up entire pizza on the toilet and things and that lot of things will gonna happen. Okay, yeah. And because of things actually happen, consequences also happen too. So basically this thing, it's not that because of this it happened this, no, because of this it happened this, but with the lot of kind of like a interchangeable patterns. Okay, because that interchangeable pattern are associated with each other. Example, you ate the pizza at 3 a.m, you kind of like throw up at 4 a.m, you kind of like feel uneasy, you went to the hospital, and when you went to the hospital, millions of consequences will gonna happen. Example, while you went to the hospital, might be you get accident, might be kind of like you didn't really find any parking spot, might be kind of like some this thing that key you kind of like a doctor might not be available, or there are so many things that actually happen. So basically this thing, your input is not exactly as output. Your input are goes through output with millions of consequences, or millions of interchangeable kind of like a path and things and that interchangeable path represent as a maze. Okay, that interchangeable path represent as a maze. Okay, so do you understand what is that input? Input means whatever the action that you do. Output means like that whatever the consequences that it happened. Maze, it represent that the interchangeable pattern in the consequences, or while doing the consequences, or kind of like a before the consequences or after the consequences, or maybe kind of like a surrounding consequences. Because as I mentioned, if you went outside, millions of consequences will gonna happen. So Do I tell you? There are like, it's a kind of like a assembly is this thing. If you are trying to solve such a maze with kind of like a millions of input, with millions of output, with millions of zigzag things and that. So so that's why our future is can't predict. We can't predict the future. Okay, right? Now basically is this thing, this is a kind of like a scenario actually happened when your action is kind of like a somebody depend on chaos theory. Like what is exactly chaos theory? A chaos theory represent that key whatever the action that you do, it is not in pattern. Like people don't really eat pizza at night at 3 a.m. No, definitely not. Okay, you ate the pizza, so that is called kind of like a chaos theory or butterfly effect. And when the butterfly effect happened, then kind of like a so many millions of consequences will gonna happen with millions of kind of like a possibility will gonna happen. Okay, yeah, this is kind of like a things. But most of the people are not ate the pizza at 3 a.m. Definitely not. Most of the people ate the dinner at 9 or 10 p.m. Okay, yeah, and then after that they kind of like a walk or whatever it is, and by 12 a.m. or maybe kind of like a 12:30 or 1 a.m. they went to the sleep. I'm telling you from average point of perspective, not everyone kind of like a follows, but almost like a 70 to 80% of the people is actually follow such kind of like a routine. Okay, like they ate the kind of like a dinner at 9 p.m. 10 p.m. and they went to the sleep at maybe kind of like a 12 a.m. or maybe kind of like a 1 a.m. or things and that. Okay, so this is kind of like a stuff. Now because of every people are kind of like a following the routine, so basically their routine or their input is a kind of like a somewhat something predictable. What's a predictable means? Like that yesterday I ate my dinner at maybe 9:30 p.m. Day before that 9:30 p.m. Day before that maybe 10 p.m. Day before that 11 p.m. Day before that 9:30 p.m. Day before that 10 p.m. Day before that 10:15 p.m. So do you understand? I ate my dinner at 9:30 to kind of like a 10:30 p.m. Okay, so this is called kind of like a predictable pattern. Okay, so that is called kind of like a predictable pattern. Now this is because of it is a kind of like a predictable pattern. We kind of like a understand what you will gonna eat. Like a tomorrow when you will kind of like eat your dinner. Tomorrow you will gonna eat your dinner at 9:30 p.m. or 10:30 or 10:15 p.m. Okay, so when you ate the kind of like a your dinner at 10:30 p.m. or things and that, then what will gonna happen? Because of this is kind of like a predictable consequences. So because of it predictable consequences, what exactly happened? You kind of like went to the sleep at kind of like a 12 a.m. You went to the sleep at 12 a.m. You wake up at 7 a.m. When you wake up at 7 a.m. you are kind of like a feel refreshed and things and that. You are kind of like a went to the office and things. So that is called predictable pattern. Okay, because of predictable pattern. So in this particular situation, the whatever the action that you do means whatever the input that you do is always be very less or maybe always be predictable. Always be predictable. Also, whatever the consequences that you get is also be very predictable too. Okay, also be very predictable too. And another thing, because of you are kind of like a following the proper routine or proper pattern, your maze, like kind of like interchangeable pattern, are not really that much complicated. Like basically when in the chaos theory, millions of kind of like assembly the lines or kind of like assembly breaks and things and that. But because you are kind of like a following the pattern, your possibility of changes thing will gonna happen, it's very less. Okay, like basically what might gonna happen during the night? Probably you might gonna do sex with your partner. One thing. Another thing, you might gonna wake up at night at maybe kind of like somebody 2:30 a.m. to kind of like drink the water, or maybe you might gonna eat the pizza at 3 a.m. at night. Okay, yeah. So if you ate the pizza at 3 a.m. at night, chaos theory will gonna happen. Butterfly effect will gonna happen. Okay, why not after we do sex? Butterfly effect will not gonna happen. Obviously, after you do sex, you will not gonna eat the pizza or kind of like went to the store. Definitely not. Sorry, why I'm kind of like bringing this example. Whatever. Okay, after you sex, obviously you and your partner need a sleep, and after you sex, sleep is kind of like a very essential thing. So yeah, basically after you sex, then kind of like took a bath, and after the bath, kind of like do a sleep, very good sleep. I don't know why I'm kind of like saying this thing. I don't really have any kind of like experience. Fuck. Whatever. Let's jump into that. So what I'm saying that na ki because of your kind of like a following the predictable path or predictable kind of like a input or predictable output, because of this thing you will have very less predictable input or for kind of like a actionable like a you have kind of like a very less action and very less consequences, and as also in between the mazes are not really that much complicated. Okay, so when it is not that much complicated, then I could able to be predict that what might gonna happen. Not me, but you could also predict. Ask this question to yourself: what you will gonna do tomorrow? Probably almost like a 70 to 80% of the kind of like assembly whatever you do exactly kind of like a you did in the yesterday or day before yesterday. It is also define that who you are. If you are kind of like a college working person or things like that, almost 70 to 80% of the population of the entire world are kind of like a following the pattern. They kind of like a wake up, go to the office, come to the office and things and that. Okay, 30% of the people are kind of like a very adventurous and things. Obviously they live the life in chaos theory, and probably their life is kind of like a cannot able to be predicted. Okay, so this is what kind of like a things it is. Now basically is this thing such as you could predict your future or you could predict whatever you do tomorrow. What if AI could predict? Because AI is a kind of like a much more smarter, much more kind of like a things and that, so you could do this thing, right? But how it does that thing? It need a kind of like a, because AI is a really good at finding a pattern, really good at like basically AI could kind of like a listen kind of like a thousands of pages of books in kind of like a couple of seconds or minute. It just kind of like can understand every word. So AI could understand the pattern so well and so good. Okay, now let's understand a couple of things regarding about this question land over here. Okay, now whatever the kind of like some stuff that I told you right now, it is completely depend upon information, right? Like your information. When you wake up, when you sleep, did you did you eat the pizza at 3 a.m. or not? Did you kind of like somebody had a sex, or did you kind of like do the sex during the night? Whatever kind of like information, where that information came from, that information is kind of like a really much matter. Okay, without the information, how does kind of like somebody Adam or AI could kind of like predict the possible future? I know, okay, find out like let's kind of like understand the maze and things we could do this thing, but where that information came from. So we have information, okay, yeah, like internet is a kind of like a full of information, books and things and that. Every day we are kind of like a creating trillions of information, right? So basically we do have a lot of information, right? Well, yeah, we do have a lot of information. Internet is actually filled with a kind of like assembly trillions of gigabytes and terabytes of kind of like information. Yeah, but that information is like it's not kind of like a giving the exact. It's a kind of like a things. Imagine as a kind of like that, na ki the data. Let's talk about the data. Okay, so internet is actually filled with the data, so much amount of data, but that data is, if you train your Adam, you could train your Adam, but basically is this thing. Wait, my friend is a kind of like a message me. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing that what I'm saying that na. Okay, what was I kind of like saying? Sorry, I was kind of like texting my friend. Alright, yeah. So what I was kind of like, information. Okay, data. Let's talk about the data. Okay, so whatever the kind of like a data that we have on internet, yeah, we have the data and we could train our Adam. Okay, we could kind of like somebody train Adam to kind of like somebody with the data that it has, but that data is not a kind of like assembly like a good data or high quality data. Okay, what's exactly the high quality data? Data is a data, right? Well, example, let's just say is this thing that key you wanted to kind of like do a farming. Okay, you wanted to do a farming, you wanted to grow a plant. Now basically you cannot grow a plant anywhere. No, you need a kind of like a very fertile land. If your land is not fertile, you cannot grow that many plant. You can grow plant, it's not really that you cannot grow plant, but probably you don't really have that much flexibility. Like it's not really that you cannot grow plant. Like basically is this thing in the desert, you can also grow plant too, but the land is not really that much fertile. You cannot kind of like a grow a kind of like a something the barley or any kind of like a stuff. Maybe, but still, what I'm saying is that having a fertile land is a kind of like a very much really good to grow a kind of like a really good quality of plants or really good quality of grains and things and that and that. Same thing happened with the data. Okay, yeah. So data that we have is sometimes it's fertile, sometimes it is not, sometimes it just like it's useless, nothing really at all. It just kind of like it's only just a chaos, it's a noise, it just kind of like a mixture of kind of like simply all the lands and things and that. It's just like yeah. So I know it is a kind of like a data, and from that data you could kind of like a train the AI, but the AI is a kind of like a very data hungry monster. And basically is this thing, they want more and more data. But if I kind of like give them a very high quality data, very kind of like a very best quality of data, then they could kind of like produce a very high quality output. Okay, so what is exactly that high quality data? What exactly is this thing? Okay, so basically is this thing, Adam can predict the future, right? The AI that I'm building that could predict the future. Okay, that future, that who will kind of like predict the future? Like who is that for? Obviously for humans. Like I am not kind of like a building AI for the aliens or things and that. No, I am making AI, or I'm making kind of like a Adam for humans, right? So I need a information of humans. I need a information of humans. Okay, and where that information came from? Facebook. Yeah, you could get the information, but not clearly. Instagram, same thing. WhatsApp, no, not really that much. Like you could get the information from the Google, from WhatsApp, from Facebook, or things and that, but the information is not really that much kind of like a very fertile. Artifact is that kind of like a very fertile information that came from user. And this is not just a kind of like simply just a data, that is a kind of like a very refined data. That is a kind of like a data is a like a literally it's a people thought process. Like since right now you are kind of like listening right now, this is your kind of like listening my thoughts, and that thoughts are very fertile, very like a things. Okay, yeah. Now imagine millions and billions of people who are kind of like a recording artifact. And if I have that data, that is a very high quality data, so much high quality. It's a kind of like somebody finding a kind of like somebody pure form of gold in the land. Pure form, like you cannot even, you don't need to kind of like somebody just a kind of like a refine and things. It's very pure. That is what kind of like artifact data, and that is a kind of like a pure form of data, and that is the strength of artifact. Because of that, that is the strength of Adam. Okay, because of that, Adam can predict the possible future is about when it has that fertile data, when it has that kind of like a data about the people. What does people think? What does people, their thought process? What are their people? Okay, yeah. When the people who are kind of like a recording artifact and things and that, I get that data and use that data to train Adam. And because of Adam could use that high quality data, Adam have the entire information of every people on every part of the world. And because of it has that information, it could kind of like create the simulation process. By the way, simulation process means like that finding a path from input to output in that maze. That is called simulation process. Okay, I didn't kind of like mention this thing. Simulation process is actually happening because of that. This is a kind of like a structure. Okay, yeah, like input, output, and maze. Okay, but the finding a path is very much complicated, because as I mentioned, millions of possible consequences, millions of possible input. Because of this thing, you cannot find a path. Okay, yeah, you need a very high quality data from the people. Okay, and when it has a kind of like that data from the people, it could simulate the scenario. Okay, how this actually happened. Let's take a simple example. Okay, let's just say same thing, I ate a pizza at 3 a.m. Okay, yeah. Now this is a kind of like a chaos theory. Okay, now because of it has a kind of like a chaos theory, which is a kind of like actually cannot able to be define the possible future. Let me explain. Okay, how many people will eat the pizza, full pizza, at night at 3 a.m.? Give me the number. 10 out of maybe, like basically let's take a kind of like a ask this question to yourself. 100 out of how many people will kind of like eat the pizza at 3 a.m.? Probably maybe one or two, not 90 to 95%, definitely not. Maybe 1 or 2% of the people might gonna eat pizza at 3 a.m. Okay, not things and that and that. So because of this is a kind of like a something the kind of like a some possibility of future prediction is very low. Because of it has a kind of like a very low, that means it has a kind of like a based on chaos theory, it based on butterfly effect. And when it has a kind of like a that incident is actually in the butterfly effect, Adam cannot determine the possible future, because it's very less information regarding about that. Because of that, there is no information that how many people will eat the pizza at 3 a.m. Definitely not. There is very less information, and when there is less information, Adam cannot able to predict. But if you ate your dinner at 10 p.m. and you went to the sleep at maybe 12 a.m. okay, at night, at midnight, so that is a kind of like almost like a 90% of the people who are kind of like a sleep like that. So basically this is the kind of like a only prediction pattern, because almost like a 95% of entire planet of the people who are kind of like a follow the same routine kind of like that. So Adam understand that, and because of Adam understand that, Adam find the path, find the kind of like a simulate the scenario that will you gonna wake up tomorrow at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. or things and that and that. Adam try to possible understanding and things and that, and it would kind of like a simulate the scenario. Now for the example point of perspective, I'm kind of like a giving you very simple example so that you understand things. Let me tell you one thing, the possible input is far more complicated. Okay, as I mentioned, it is a kind of like a millions, but it has a millions or billions of kind of like assembly the possible input with trillions of possible consequences. Okay, when you input such a prompt that include with a kind of like a effect on millions of so many people. Example, let's just say I wanted to kind of like a establish such a law regarding about the traffic. Okay, like let's just say that I wanted to kind of like reduce the traffic. Okay, or maybe kind of like I don't want to spend that much amount of time in traffic. So I am the kind of like a policy maker in India, and I wanted to kind of like solve this issue regarding about traffic. I'm living Bangalore, and Bangalore is a kind of like hotspot of traffic. Now what do I supposed to do? Okay, now I have a Adam can predict the possible future. So basically this thing, Adam can kind of like see into the future, can predict the possibility, but still Adam have information regarding about the people, regarding about how they drive, regarding about where they stop, like a things and that. Okay, because it has a kind of like filled with almost like a billions of artifact and kind of like a things and that. So Adam knows that how does people drive, how does kind of like a people things and that. Okay, if you're not really understanding things, let me explain. You are in kind of like assembly standing on the signal. Okay, suddenly signal got green. Did you kind of like assembly basically did you kind of like assembly accelerate very slow, and then no, you will not, because the road is empty, the green signal, you will kind of like push the bike or push your car a little bit faster, so that you will kind of like assembly, right? Definitely. And when someone is kind of like blocking, or someone ahead of you is a kind of like not going ahead, you are kind of like get frustrated, what the fuck that you are doing, this particular person is not going, like there is a green signal. All right, so do you understand? The people have kind of like a different thought process regarding about the different particular scenario. That scenario is kind of like a came from the artifact, and that scenario from artifact, that information that Adam has, and Adam could kind of like understand what might gonna people will gonna affect. Now Adam does not gonna solve the traffic problem by this. Okay, yeah. The real strength of Adam is the Adam API, because when you connect Adam with the network, or with the kind of like a traffic signal, or kind of like traffic cameras and things and that, Adam not only access the information from Adam has that, like Adam has the information from artifact, but Adam also access the information from the network, from kind of like simply the traffic signals and things and that. And from that thing, Adam could able to be see that in the road, or in the kind of like assembly road, there is a kind of like a multiple square. In that square, how many traffic are there, how many kind of like cars are kind of like stuck over there. Adam could kind of like see millions or billions of path at the same time in the city, so that it could kind of like understand and kind of like figure it out. Okay, like basically if we could kind of like divert this kind of like assembly traffic to this location, this location, this location, probably kind of like assembly the traffic will kind of like reduce. Or if you kind of like let them access the information for longer period of time, Adam also understand the pattern in the traffic signal in Bangalore, and Adam could able to be kind of like predict at the kind of like a 5 to 7 p.m. there is a kind of like a traffic congestion will gonna happen. So in that thing, how should you supposed to be kind of like a people who are kind of like let's just say kind of like a some certain part of the Bangalore has a come from kind of like office, and some part of the people who are kind of like a home. So basically there is a cluster of kind of like office, and there is a cluster of people. So most of people are actually going from B point to A point. So in that particular moment at 5 to 7 a.m., 5 to 7 p.m., possibly make sure that have a very less red signal, make sure they have a kind of like a very less kind of like intervention, make sure they have kind of like a clear road, so that they will not gonna spend so much amount of time with the Adam information. With the Adam have access of kind of like traffic signals and cameras and things and that, Adam could reduce the kind of like assembly the traffic things and and it actually happened like instantaneously, because Adam has because kind of like a classical traffic signals are kind of like a based on just a kind of like a timer. That's it. They don't really care about the kind of like traffics and things. Right now, the traffic signal are kind of like a somewhat something a little bit of advanced, but with the help of Adam could kind of like reduce the traffic signal very drastically. Now you are thinking that, dude, that's evil, like literally evil. Like basically, as I mentioned, that key Adam does have information regarding about the billions of people, and Adam also need the information of the traffic signals and things and that. What if someone hack the Adam, and they will kind of like utilize for bad purposes and things and that. Like basically, when such thing will gonna happen, then things might gonna get chaos. Like let's just say like someone kind of like somebody attach Adam with a kind of like somebody the stock market or things and that, or maybe someone kind of like somebody like give the access Adam to the kind of like entire kind of like somebody the ecosystem of world and things and that. So in that situation, who controls the Adam? Or like whoever the kind of controls Adam, they will kind of like actually fuck. We will back to the kind of like a Terminator thing. T-100. By the way, I like this movie. Okay, yeah. All right. So it's a very kind of like a very possible future. Okay, let me tell you one thing. Humans are always been kind of like evolved through scared. We don't really have food. That's why we have started farming. We don't really have a kind of like a self-defense. We invented the weapon. Because of we scared, we try to prevent ourselves from every possible things. Right? Now, sometimes we kind of like create something that we cannot able to be controlled. And this is where kind of like humans need to be understand. As a people need to be understand that key, our existence will gonna threaten not only by other like species or machine or any kind of like some stuff or kind of like only another planet or maybe meteor strike. No, the people, the threat from the human are from the human. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing, the extinction of the human will gonna happen only and only by humans, not any other kind of like some stuff, because it's not really possible. Okay, yeah. Like if you're kind of like a thinking that ki maybe we would kind of like simply achieve kind of like a higher intelligence and things, and we might gonna kind of like a survive in universe and things and that humans are so small in the universe, so small, so small. Okay, yeah. Like I don't know, like I was kind of like watching kind of like a couple of videos and things like that, but okay, this is kind of like a topic. I don't want to talk about that thing. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing. Obviously, also while I'm kind of like a saying this thing, I'm also really get scared too. Like I don't have a kind of like information about the traffic signals and things and that obviously it could kind of like reduce the traffic, but it could kind of like create the chaos too. What if someone hacked the Adam and kind of like somebody just a kind of like somebody using a traffic signal with the wrong way in that particular situation? Maybe instead of kind of like stopping the kind of like somebody the traffic, what if someone kind of like somebody that key green signal actually happened, everyone kind of like push the pedal, kind of like somebody that key vehicles are accelerating, and suddenly from the left side those people, those kind of like a vehicles are came to you, like a collision actually happened, and kind of like somebody hundreds of people actually die in that particular traffic thing in the road. So things might be kind of like a very scary, right? Yeah, that is true, that is true. It's not really that ki Adam is kind of like a cannot able to be hacked. Okay, or it's not really that. What I realized that na ki right now I am in the building phase. Okay, yeah, not building phase, like I will gonna build this thing, but still. But what I'm saying is that na ki I don't know. I have to be asked this question to myself. Okay, yeah. Regarding about the threat that I will gonna face in the future, for that threat, should I supposed to be stop myself, or should I supposed to be not evolve myself, or should I supposed to be not innovate myself? Most of the people might gonna say this thing: do not invent such a AI that could predict the future, because it might gonna harm us in the future, or it might gonna kind of like a people might gonna use for wrong purposes. That is true, that is definitely true. So should I not invent? Like ask this question. So should I not invent, or should I, like, basically is this thing, ask this question. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing now. Let's talk about the AI. Okay, yeah. Right now we are living in the era of AI, artificial intelligence. Okay, yeah. Now basically this is AI is a kind of like a some resisting that key, like basically what I'm saying is that na ki some people are kind of like scared, or some people kind of like things like basically as this I don't know how to supposed to explain this. It's a kind of like a things that na ki innovation kind of like somebody create a threat for the human. So for that innovation, should we not innovate that? Okay, like basically is this thing, because of the car you might get die inside the car, so should we not invent the car, or what? Like every action comes with the consequences. You build the car, obviously you will kind of like somebody get accident or things and that, but we could reduce that na. We cannot able to be stop the growth because of kind of like a somebody that key threat might gonna kind of like a somebody that key we experience or things and that. Imagine with the predictable AI, what could we do? What could we could add the value into the humanity? So much, so many things. Adam might gonna solve so many problems. Like basically is this thing, the wastage of material, supply or things and that. Like basically is this thing, if we knew that key people are kind of like hungry and things and that, and they don't really get a food, so possibly is this thing we could kind of like control the food. Like basically there are so many where the food are kind of like a wastage, and there are kind of like so many people are kind of like a get starving, they didn't really get the food. So having Adam could kind of like somebody the reduce the kind of like somebody the excessive amount of food, and kind of like somebody giving them food where it needed. Okay, yeah, same goes with the water, same goes with the fuel, same goes with the kind of like somebody architecture, same goes with the kind of like somebody economy, same goes with the money, same goes with the things. Every person kind of like get equal rights, threats, or equal rights, equal stage regarding about whatever they want in their life. Like basically is this thing now. Yes, obviously it's not, I'm not really sure that key like it's kind of like a far easier for me to say this thing that no one will gonna hack the atom and things and that. But still, I live in reality world. I'm living reality world, and obviously there might gonna happen. There are kind of like so many smart people are exist, and they will kind of like do so many kind of like stupid shit that I don't really knew it what will gonna happen. Okay, so there are so many things, so many things actually happen. I have to be asked this question to myself that because of the threat might gonna be experienced in the future, for that threat, should we supposed to be stop it? Ask this question to yourself. Okay, yeah, like like basically is this thing that tomorrow you realize that you will kind of like someone kind of like a basically a fortune teller kind of like giving you a kind of like some advice, or maybe kind of like a future that says that you will gonna die in the office. Now he didn't really mention anywhere, but you will kind of like die in the office. So what should you supposed to do? Should you not gonna do a job? Like ask this question to yourself. Like, should you not gonna do a job? And if you're not gonna do a job, how do you supposed to survive? How do you kind of like feed your family? Obviously, like we are arrive as a humans, we are arrive at some certain time at this time that basically innovation is actually happened by need. Need is a mother of innovation. Okay, yeah. But right now in this era, we are living in such an era where innovation doesn't really require need, because innovation are right now associated with the economy. That's why every year iPhone launch, every year Apple launch new iPhone, Samsung launch new phone. Every year kind of like simply their companies kind of like simply innovate their product, things like that. And that is not because of need, it's because of the economy is actually attached with it. And because of the economy attached with it, humans need to innovate the stuff. If they don't, they will fall back, because innovation is kind of like associated with the kind of like economy and things and that. So basically is this thing, if I not make such a AI that could predict the future, why does other people will not gonna make such thing like that? It is not. You cannot stop the growth. You can't, like basically this thing, we can't stop the growth. And that's what I mentioned, that human have a threats from human, not from any such civilization. We will kind of like die is because of our growth. Okay, if you're not really understanding, take a Japan example. Japan has a kind of like a really good infrastructure, so many robots, so many things. How many people live there? How many people are kind of like like basically that country is actually dying. They don't really have people. Literally, they are kind of like suffering from less amount of people. So basically, what basically does people actually die because of disease? No, they didn't really make more humans, or maybe kind of like something actually happened. Like I don't know. Like it's a kind of like some birth control and things like that. Like it's not really birth control, but kind of like something is thing that in 90s there are kind of like a far less kind of like some babies are kind of like born and things like that. So that's why kind of like a birth rate issue and things like that. So like this is what it is. I don't want to talk about this, but if I'm gonna try to talk about that particular stuff now, just kind of like only I will gonna talk about the birth ratio and things, the reason behind it, and that. I will not gonna talk about that. I'm gonna ask this question right now. I'm kind of like a very blunt regarding about that. Whoever you are kind of like listening right now after almost like a maybe kind of like a 5 or 10 year later. Okay, right now I'm kind of like saying this thing. Today's date is the 26th July 2026. Okay, at almost like a 10:40 p.m. I'm saying this thing to you. Ask this question to yourself, or kind of like give me the answer. Okay, because of the future, or because of kind of like something that future might gonna kind of like somebody like because of the innovation might gonna go wrong or things and that, should I not innovate, or what is exactly your opinion? What exactly is this thing? Because I seen from every possible angle. If I not make it, other people can make. Okay, yeah. And basically is this thing why, and I'm thinking that I will be not the only one who could kind of like build such a AI that could predict the future. Definitely not. Google can make it, Anthropic can make it, OpenAI can make it. Why? Because they train their they train their kind of like assembly AI in a such a way that they could kind of like a predict, because they have kind of like a get the understanding the pattern much more better. Every year when the kind of like a chat GPT kind of like a new model launch, they kind of like have context window of kind of like a millions and things like that and that. They are very power, and they are kind of like a guessing so much amount of things and that and that. Predicting possible future is not a kind of like a things that ki I would gonna make it. No, I might gonna kind of like initiate first, but still there are so many people who will gonna make it. So many people. Okay, yeah. We have to be understand as a human. We have to be understand that ki we are entering in a such a world or such a era that growth are actually happen so fast that we cannot able to be accumulated, or we cannot able to be kind of like a kind of like able to be understand. My father don't really understand what is actually AI. My mother just, she can't even use the phone, like she don't really know how to use the phone and things and that and that. And this is actually happening kind of like a somebody second generation. Okay, yeah. What my kid will gonna know about AI is actually much more than me. And basically I build the AI. Okay, I'm building the Adam, but still my son would be kind of like a much more evolved in AI. He knew so many things that AI could do. He knew so many things that new technology would gonna do. I don't know, because this is kind of like a things. Right now technology is kind of like a going so faster that within a year things are changed. People are not people change, but things are changed, like the technology are kind of like a shifting so rapidly. Just you might gonna realize that you have a cancer, and you are kind of like a went to the surgery, and doctor is not even there, the robot is there, the robot is kind of like doing the surgery, and you just kind of like a fuck, what the fuck is that? But then you realize that no, that robot is kind of like a controlled by doctor, which is kind of like somebody like a almost like 100 200 or 500 kilometer away from you, and you are kind of like doing the cancer surgery or whatever it is. That future is existed in, that is not in future, that is a present, by the way. And this actually exists. I don't know, I have to end here. All right, this is it, and thank you.